Welcome back, and way to go as you've been studying for world history all year, and you've turned in because that AP test is around the corner. This video is an attempt to look at India from the beginning of the course all the way to the end to help you with all that knowledge that's kind of swirling around in your brain from each of the units to be placed in one single video as we can help connect the dots. Your brain does not need to feel like it does when you ride the tilt-a-whirl at an amusement park or the lobster ride that I took my 3-year-old on at Six Flags Great America. I'm Steph Gerges, the parent of the year clearly, and here we are to review India's history. So take some good notes here because India may be one of the College Board's kind of favorite regions. In AP World, we have 4 major time periods that help chunk information and global events in your brain. We'll pick up the course in 1200, the era of state building and these expanding trade networks. And India has 2 major empires in power at this time, the Delhi Sultanate in the north and Vijayanagar in the south. Now, before we look into these 2 empires that are building their states in this time period, we need to back the train up and talk about some various belief systems and practices that developed in India over time. Both Hinduism and Buddhism emerged in South Asia in the Indian subcontinent. They are also wildly different. Hinduism has no specific founder and is often a combination of many traditions and philosophy. Think of Hinduism as super flexible. Unlike other religions which are more strict on their beliefs, Hindus believe in the doctrine of samsara, the continuous cycle of birth, death, and reincarnation. They also believe in karma, which is the universal law of cause and effect. The ultimate goal is the release from the cycle of samsara, and this escape is called moksha. There is this person's soul that then is reunited with Brahman. Now, Buddhism also emerged later on the Indian subcontinent based on the teaching of Siddhartha Gautama. Their main ideas can be summed up with the 4 noble truths, that all life is suffering, suffering is caused from desire or attachment, people can be freed from that desire, and people can really achieve that by following the Eightfold Path. The goal of Buddhism is to achieve enlightenment, which is also known as nirvana. And there are some major branches that we learned about Buddhism in the course. The main traditional ones are Theravada Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism. We'll also later talk about throughout the course of Zen Buddhism or Pure Land Buddhism, which we're going to see more in China and then later into Japan. But we are not talking about those places because this video is about India. Now, later in history, we'll also see Islam spread to this region as Turkic and Afghan invaders move into the area of South Asia. Known as the Delhi Sultanate, they'll establish a state in northern India where they found military success. They struggled to form a highly bureaucratic state and were more decentralized than most imperial empires during this time period. Also with them, they brought Islamic beliefs to India. They were semi-tolerant of Hindu beliefs, but required non-Muslims to pay the jizya tax. The byproduct of this is the spread of Islam into the Indian subcontinent and the establishment of the roots for another successful Islamic empire in the future within India. Now, in the southern tip of India, another state emerges, which is known as Vijayanagara. Now, this empire was built around the ideas of a strong Hindu belief system and really keeping Islam out of the region. The biggest thing to remember is this. In this case, Hinduism was the unifying force. Another major impact on world history was the Indian Ocean Trade Network, which connected India to the Swahili coast in Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, Southeast Asian states like Srivijava, and also into China. Initially, the tricky part of the Indian Ocean Trade Network was really kind of trying to rely and sail based on when the monsoon winds blew different ways. Now, the cool thing about Indian Ocean trade is that it allowed for the transport of much heavier goods and larger amounts of those goods compared to what you could have on land. It also caused major new trading cities to emerge that were along the ports of the Indian Ocean. Cities in India like Calicut also emerged as they became emporial locations where many goods were exchanged as a middle ground between Africa and China. With the Indian Ocean, India was known for its high-quality cotton textiles and woven carpets. However, like the most desired goods in the Indian Ocean, India was really known for their spices, specifically chili peppers. Indian food is often notoriously spicy, and with neighboring spices like black pepper, mustard seeds, nutmeg, cumin, cloves, you'll have a flavor explosion in your mouth. Now, this will shift us into the next historical period of our course, the years of 1450 to 1750, the rise rise of both land-based and maritime empires. The former Delhi Sultanate will be replaced by the Mughal Empire, and the Mughals united not just northern India, but southern, where we had that former Hindu kingdom. Now, I feel like the Mughals always end up on the AP test in some form, so take note. This is going to be on the test in some fashion. Now, the Mughal Empire was founded by Babur, who conquered the Delhi Sultanate after the First Battle of Panipat. This will mark a continuation of Islamic empires in India that will rule, though, a majority Hindu population. Babur's grandson Akbar will rule from 1556 to 1605 and continue enlarging the size of the Mughal Empire. He was known, though, for his religious tolerance. Despite being a Muslim with a majority of the people who were Hindu, he eliminated the jizya tax and even married a Hindu princess himself in this kind of matrimonial alliance. In fact, he was very much a religious seeker, or at least curious in the realm of religion. He built temples where he invited teachers from other religions to come and chat. Hindus, Zoroastrians, Christians, to all come and converse with him. He also created a very centralized government, which was different from how government had operated in India in the past, where it was more decentralized. He also even allowed Hindus to keep key positions in the government. Zamindars were these paid government employees who collected taxes. And over time, these zamindars were given land and were also allowed to keep a percentage of the taxes they collected, which made this class even stronger and more powerful. And in many ways, it was the richest and most powerful land empire in the region. Now, in this course, it is often said that people legitimize their rule by building big stuff, or by building monumental architecture. And one of the most famous tourist sites is built during the Mughal rule, which is the Taj Mahal. It's iconic. It was built by Shah Jahan, which was Akbar's grandson. He built it as a mausoleum for his wife, and he too is laid to rest there after he passed. However, this religious tolerance ended with the Mughal ruler Aurangzeb. He worked to purify India of its predominant cultural beliefs of Hinduism in favor for his own Islamic beliefs. He reinstated the jizya tax on Hindus, and many Hindu temples were destroyed. Things continued to get a little more complicated in the Indian subcontinent as European explorers arrived. And Indian Ocean trade just increased because everyone wanted those spices. Now, this desire will initially make the Mughals even more economically successful. For now. However, there's a new political power that was rising within India in this Hindu warrior group known as the Marathas, who fought against the Islamic Mughal Empire in the late 1600s and into the early 1700s. The fighting went on for like 25 years, starting with Aurangzeb and the Maratha leader Chhatrapati Shivaji. He's like the emperor, and as they were interested in establishing a Hindu political power in the subcontinent, similar to like the Reconquista that we see in the Iberian Peninsula by Christians. The Maratha Empire is often credited with ending Mughal rule in India and is often seen as a true Indian powerhouse. But it's tricky because unlike Chinese dynasties replacing another, neither the Mughals nor the Marathas really cease to exist, but rather Maratha will grow in their influence. Trade will continue to flourish in the Indian Ocean with the arrival of the Portuguese, the Spanish, and the Dutch. India continued to benefit from the export of their spices and their cotton textiles, which will increase their jobs for peasants and specialized artisan labor. Now, we know the Portuguese will be the first to round Africa and eventually reach India with their navigator Vasco da Gama, where they eventually set up a trading post in the city of Goa in 1510. And this is where we really see a collision of the land-based empires with the Mughals, and they intersect with the maritime empires of the Portuguese. In fact, you might not even know this, but the Portuguese controlled Goa even after India achieved their independence in 1947. But things will shift over time as we go into our next time period of 1750 to 1900. This is the era focused on the Industrial Revolution and European imperialism, which will negatively impact the flourishing Indian world. There was a steep decline in Indian manufacturing as shipbuilding declined and shifted towards Europe. The same is true of the textile production in India, where they couldn't compete with British and American factory-produced textiles because of the Industrial Revolution. Plus, the intricate rugs were harder to sell when the West could produce them faster and much cheaper. Plus, the British became more powerful in the Indian Ocean with the British East India Company. once was just a joint stock company, but now the British East India Company shifted into like this imperialistic power and control over India. While they initially worked very closely with Indian princes and even hired Indians to work for the British, their economic motives began to deny India of its sovereignty and right to rule, and people started to push back and resist. One of the starkest examples of this will be the Sepoy Mutiny in 1857. Most of the soldiers, or sepoys, that worked for the British East India Company were Hindu or Muslim, because they were from India. And when they learned that the British were introducing this new cartridge that had been greased with a mixture of cow and pig fat, something that was both very offensive to both Muslims and Hindus, really just kind of was the spark that started their own revolt against the British East India Company. They were furious. They thought that the British were out to convert them to Christianity. And again, it led to this rebellion. Eventually, the British ended the rebellion and killed thousands of Indians. After this, the British exiled the Mughal ruler for his involvement in the rebellion, and India shifted into an official British colony. Now, let's not forget to connect the dots between the British, India, and China. It was India that the British harvest poppies to make opium that they sold then to the Chinese. Another move the British made in India was to build massive railway systems to connect the subcontinent, while also lowering the cost of transporting their raw materials and finished goods back to the ports. Plus, India was already known for its cotton and textiles, and with the Industrial Revolution thriving in Britain, these resources only really heightened the British's power. In many ways, the British stunted the growth of India as they took resources for their own profit, placing high taxes on Indian textiles, making them unprofitable, or even shutting down Indian mining in fear that they would use lead to create ammunition, which would threaten the British rule. They went even so far as forbidding the production of firearms in India. Let's make one other major connection. With slavery being abolished in the British colonies, there was an increased need for low-wage agricultural laborers. Another type of labor system was indentured servitude, and we will see that 1.5 million Indians who will leave the subcontinent as indentured servants to work in sugar plantations in the British colonies in the Caribbean, and a large number will also then go to South Africa. As we enter the final period of our course, 1900 to present day, India will be impacted by both the world wars and most clearly through the decolonization that marks the 20th century. In India, there was also a large push for self-rule and this decolonization from the British. Mohandas Gandhi was a leader in the Indian National Congress who believed in an independent India that was unified with both Hindus and Muslims living together in harmony. He advocated for nonviolence and civil disobedience to achieve these aims. But not everyone agreed with Gandhi's views of an independent, unified India, as Muhammad Ali Jinnah felt that though Muslims would always be a minority within this newly created state. He formed the Muslim League as he advocated for an independent nation for Muslims. But a major event derailed these movements as World War I began. Many Indians fought for their colonial mother countries during the war. Over 1 million to be exact. They fought in Germany and in Egypt and Gallipoli and German East Africa. Over 1 year after World War I ends, a group of Indian nationalists gathered in a public garden in Amritsar, Punjab, to protest the arrest of pro-Indian independence leaders by the British. In a classic move to not at all de-escalate a conflict, but rather throw gas on the fire, the British fired on the protesters, as assembly was illegal according to British law in India. It was a massacre that radicalized many and pushed even more towards an independence movement in India. Gandhi continued to work alongside the Indian National Congress to coordinate a movement against British imperialism. He again focused on civil disobedience, which really just means purposely breaking unjust laws and accepting the punishment. Two of his most notable acts of civil disobedience would be the Homespun movement and the Salt March that drew attention to British colonial rule and really hit the British pocketbook. The homespun movement preached to Indian masses to spin and weave their own clothes at home instead of buying the British textiles that were imported in India and probably from Indian cotton. It was also illegal for Indians to make their own salt, something very important for the preservation and food in general. Instead, they were forced to buy it from the British. Gandhi led the Salt March, which gained support and momentum as he walked 240 miles to the sea, where he then broke the law and made his own salt. This sparked a mass movement among the people all over the country to gather and make their own salt again, which again hurt the British pocketbook. But then another world war breaks out in 1939, which again disrupts this independence movement. Millions of Indians still fought on the side of the Allies to support the British. However, Gandhi led the Quit India movement, which denounced Hitler and the Nazis in Germany, but refused to fight alongside of the British until they were independent. This led the British to arrest over 60,000 Indians who refused to join the war effort. Many in the Muslim League did, though, work closely with authorities to provide support in the war effort. Now, once World War II came to a close, independence was finally negotiated with Britain in 1947. Unlike Gandhi's hope of a unified India, there were two new states created, India and Pakistan. Although you could argue 3 states because it was East and West Pakistan, with East Pakistan later becoming Bangladesh. But yes, new states were created from these negotiations. And while it was peaceful, the movement of Hindus from Pakistan to resettle in India and Muslims leaving India to resettle in Pakistan created a lot of turmoil and cost between 0.5 to 1 million people's deaths in the process. There continues to be tensions between Pakistan and India over the region of Kashmir, which is only heightened because they're both nuclear powers. India today is a democratic nation that was first led by Jawaharlal Nehru as their first prime minister. Additionally, in the context of the Cold War during this period, they abstained from allying with either of the 2 major superpowers, the United States or the Soviet Union, and they were founding members of the non-aligned movement. Additionally, women were granted the right to vote in India in 1947 when they gained independence, and Indira Gandhi, the daughter of Nehru, became the 3rd Prime Minister of India and the first female Prime Minister of India. The economic issues in India would hurt her popularity as there was high inflation and poverty that impacted the population. The Green Revolution in India subsequently culminated under her government in the 1970s. She transformed the country from a nation that was highly reliant on importing grains and prone to famine to one that was largely able to feed itself and became successful in achieving its goal of food security. Although she didn't really have a great track record when it came to human rights, and jailed opposition leaders and was even involved in a large-scale sterilization as a form of birth control to stabilize population growth in her country. She would be assassinated in 1984 after tension between the government and Sikhs once again came to a head in Amritsar. India has the 2nd largest population in the entire world, after China, and they've been at the center of the debate over developing nations needing to curb their increased output of carbon dioxide that is leading to global warming. As a largely English-speaking country, India has opened markets and has been wildly successful in the global market, especially in tech industries. So, there you have it, an overview of India from the beginning of the course to the end. So let's break it down fast. Hinduism and Buddhism both emerged here in India by 1200. 2 major empires existed there, Muslim Empire in the north with the Delhi Sultanate and a Hindu Empire in the south with the Vijayanagar. Lots of Indian Ocean trade, but mostly everything was decentralized. The Mughal Empire will arise, and it lasts for a very long time. Everyone loves Akbar, religious tolerance, Aurangzeb, not as cool. They get really rich, though, because of spices and textiles. The Portuguese come, the British will come, the Marathas will challenge the Mughal rule. Shoot, the British East India Company is being all imperialistic. Sepoy Mutiny leads to India being an actual British colony. Railroads, textiles, and opium for China. Gandhi and Jinnah both lead independence movements, the INC and the Muslim League. 2 world wars sidetracked that whole goal. India fights on the side of the Allies. Gandhi, though, he quit. Gandhi has the Quit India movement, and he's all non-violent and doesn't actually want to fight the Nazis, but doesn't like them either. Post-war, we get independence, 1947. We create 2 countries, or maybe 3, India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. They're part of the non-aligned movement, don't want any part of the Cold War, lots of development, people, and of course, Bollywood. What's next? Only time will tell. I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you felt like it was, I'm glad I could be of service. Subscribe to the channel and check out the rest of the playlist as I help you review region by region. I hope that you learned more about yesterday so that you can understand today and we can all write a better tomorrow. Till next time, have a good one and keep studying.